In life, either you own your results or your results own you. To become a great storyteller, you have to become a great story finder.
One can be trained to be a good speaker, but do you think that one can be trained to be a good leader?
When you change how you see yourself, your audience changes how they see you. Man, you asked some tough questions today, bud.
Today in the LeaderSeat, we have Roberto Monaco, an extraordinary individual whose journey from arriving in the United States with no English and no connections to becoming a top speaker and coach. Originally from Brazil, he has quickly rose to prominence, delivering over 3,200 presentations for corporate America and coaching a diverse range of individuals, everyone from pilots to Super Bowl champions. As a former #1 revenue generator at the Anthony Robbins Companies, he has an impressive track record. As co-founder of Influenceology, he specializes in improving communication and presentation skills. Roberto has left a mark in the industry and joins us today as we dive into an inspiring journey from adversity to success. Roberto, thank you for joining me.
Nima, thanks so much for being here. I'm so excited to have a conversation with you today.
Likewise. So I want to hear your journey before 1995. And I picked 1995 because that's when you decided to take your journey to America. So before you came to America, what was your upbringing life like in Brazil?
Yeah. So I grew up in Brazil in a city called Porto Alegre, which is all the way in the south in Brazil. And when I was 15, I was like middle class. I got a job in a bank, Banco do Brasil, which is probably one of the biggest banks in Brazil. They have 150,000 employees. So I start, working in a bank. I got a BA in finance. And I remember, Nima, when I was 24 years old, I graduated. I got my degree. And I asked one question. And the question I asked was, if I stay here the next 30 years in my life, because Banco do Brasil was a quote unquote a federal job. So and once you're in, everybody retires pretty much. And then I said, do I want to spend my next 30 years working and be quote unquote the CEO of the bank at the highest I can go? And I had my gut feeling, I heard this no. And I remember coming home to my mom and said, I'm going to quit my job at Banco do Brasil. And she thought I was crazy because I made some good money, safe job, easy job. And she said, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I don't know yet, but I want to follow one of my passions. And growing up in Brazil, I admire soccer players and singers because every time I watch someone perform, there's something about them. And I say, I want that. And I couldn't explain what that was. And now I realized that was purpose. So eventually I came here in America to study English. And then I went to, I don't know if you want to get in the story, but I came here. I started studying English. I remember one day I'm reading a book and I read another question. And the second question was, if I could do anything in my life and I knew I could not fail, what would I be doing today, right here, right now? And for me, it was such a powerful question because I never grew up thinking that way of possibility. As I mentioned before, I work in a bank, went to a BA in finance, I'm going to get a job now. And eventually that question really broke my pattern. And I started looking back all my life growing up. I was the guy who always liked to encourage my friends. They always come to me with a problem and I was trying to give my best advice. I was doing coaching before coaching. And then I realized, you know what? I would love to become some type of coach, mentor, speaker. And then I put that seed in my mind, and eventually I followed through. I got a job with the Anthony Robbins Companies. Most people know Tony Robbins. And I started speaking. And then I had an amazing 6 years with my journey to Tony Robbins. And in 2009, beginning of 2009, I opened up a company called Influenceology. And our mission is to help entrepreneurs, executives, leaders to communicate and tell the story more effectively. So I love communication, especially because I struggle coming from Brazil, and we talked about before the podcast, English as a second language For me, it was my third language because in Brazil, in high school, we study Portuguese, and then you have a second language. And if you know about Brazilian geography, Brazil is surrounded by countries who speak Spanish. And I said, you know what? I will never learn English, right? Because I will never use it. So I studied Spanish. So now I'm here 25 and I have to learn the language. So for me, Les Brown has a quote that he says that from our mess comes our message. And for me, my mess was having all this knowledge I learned in Brazil, but not be able to communicate here, and you feel so powerless. And then I said, you know what? I want to work with communication, and that's what I do. So yeah.
Well, it's good thing that you learned Spanish, because we'll get to it later, but that learning Spanish kind of helped you out in translating for someone down in the future in your career.
Oh, for sure, 100%.
So we'll get to that story. But so you started banking, you asked yourself, can I be the CEO? I have two questions in this. Some people are not good at being number one, right? Some people are just great at being number two and just are not built for being number one. So did you ever think to yourself, maybe like, maybe a COO instead of the CEO? Like maybe you were going to be a great number two, but not a great number one.
Yeah, we know. I think the question for me was not about being number one or number two. For me, it was about passion.
Okay.
Because I didn't have that. I got a good job.
Yeah.
But I was making money, but I wasn't fulfilled. And I remember looking specifically at singers and soccer players. And I tell my mom, I used to have that. And my mom kind of teased me. She said, what do you mean? You can't play soccer? You can't sing? What do you mean? And I was like, no, but the purpose, the passion. And for me, I am a purpose-driven professional. Not everybody is. And the reason I do what I do, because I love to light people up. I love to help people inspire. And I feel like when you, as an entrepreneur, as a leader, we all go through challenges. We all go. Any career goes through. And I feel like when you're attached and connected to your purpose, then you have more power, more resilience, more fun, more fulfillment. Yeah. Let me give an example. My wife is from San Diego, California. I was there for many years. Now I live in Charleston, South Carolina. And when I moved here, we bought a house. And one day my wife said, hey, there's this tiny little palm tree, kind of like bugging, right in the middle of everything in my yard. And she goes, can you remove it? And I'm like, of course I can. Right? So she went to yoga, and I went to YouTube University. I'm like, how to remove a palm tree, literally. And then it was a small palm tree, and I got a shovel, and I made this circle around the palm tree, and I start digging and digging and digging and digging, like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Nima, 4 hours, nothing. And the palm tree was small. I couldn't move it. The roots are so deep. And then it was a Sunday. I was super frustrated. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to wait for my gardener, Justin. He's coming here on Monday, and I'm going to ask him. So Monday comes. My gardener comes in. I say, hey, buddy, let me show you something. So we walk towards the palm tree, and he started laughing already. And there's all this mess. And he said, what's up? I said, well, I was trying to remove this, but this is hard. And he looked at the palm tree, look at the hole, and look at me and start laughing. He said, you won't be able to move it. And I said, how come? And he said, do you see this oak tree here? This big oak tree? And I'm like, yeah. See, this little palm tree is attached to something bigger than itself. That's why it's so powerful. Underneath it, the roots of the palm tree was attached to the oak tree, and we won't be able to move it. And that's purpose. Purpose that when you attach to something bigger than yourself. And for me, I operate that way. That's why I left the bank. I would be retired in Brazil right now, and which some people are like, wow, you'd be retired, but like the success without fulfillment is failure. And I don't know if it would be fulfilled all these years of my career. So I love what I do now because I have an oak tree. I'm attached to a purpose. So that's the idea.
Awesome. And when you're saying that story, you correlated to a purpose. I also correlate that to like having a mentor. That route could be you connecting to a mentor who's greater than you, who's encouraging you and all that.
100%. I love that. 100%.
Yeah. So 1995, you moved here. I know so you said you came to America, you started working with Anthony Robbins. There's no way, there had to be something in the middle of that,
Oh, no,
right?
for sure. No, eventually, yeah, for sure. Yeah, for
So
sure.
what was the plan when you came to America? What was the plan in your head as a 25-year-old? Because you sound like you're coming here as an 18-year-old still.
No, my plan was when I came here, my plan was to just, I was going to learn English or I get my MBA for 2 years and go back to Brazil. That was my plan.
Okay.
I didn't know anything about the motivational industry. I got a couple jobs in sales before, selling computers, selling collection services. But again, I found the same pattern before of like, I'm a kind of person that if I have to do something to provide for my family, I'll do it. And I had the sales jobs as to build my experience. But again, I found the same trap of like not being passionate about it.
Yeah.
And I promised myself that if I'm going to be away from my family in Brazil, if I'm going to risk come here, I'll not live the same. I'll not be in the same pattern that I was in Brazil.
What was that? So you asked when you were in banking, you asked yourself, can I see myself as a CEO? Was there a time where you asked yourself a question when you started speaking, like, can I see myself doing this as a career? Did you ever ask yourself any questions to make sure that this is what you wanted to do, even though you had the passion for it?
Yeah, for 100%. So the question that truly changed my life, first one was the bank, right? Do I want to be doing this? And I had a no. And I'm like, man, I don't want to live with that incongruency. And the second question is that, and most people in self-development, they have heard this question. I would say 99.99% have heard, but I'm telling you, most people have no answer. Or they have act upon the answer. And the question was, if I could do anything really, and I know I could not fail, no barriers, what would I be doing today, right here, right now? They may have some people, they don't answer. Some people answer, but they don't act upon it. So for me, in the beginning, I said, what I want to do. In the beginning, I didn't know. And I started going to training, self-development. And I remember one of my first seminars ever, that's why I do seminars, was a company called PSI. I was in San Diego. I was working full-time in sales. And I remember going to this self-development seminar. And I was so broke, Nima, that on Sunday, was a 4-day event, they do this goal-setting exercise. And literally, they have all these categories. What do you want to do for a profession, relationships? And they had a toy category. And the toy category was like, you want to buy a boat? You want to buy a car? And my toy was I have this paper. I saved it. Was a $45 cologne. That's where it comes from, the mindset.
Yeah.
And eventually, the last day, they passed the mic. And I got the mic and started talking. And some people are like, hey, man, you should be a speaker. And like, me? They're like, can I do this? And again, that theme coming back of passion. And then I kept exploring. And for many years, I didn't take action because of my own limitations. Well, I'm from Brazil. I have a thick accent. People, when I hear about me, all that jazz. And I bought that story. And that story literally stopped me 5 years from taking massive action. Eventually, I met someone that connected me with an interview at Anthony Robbins Companies. So yeah, I've been through a lot in between, and a lot of lessons, a lot of struggles as well.
So I'm assuming the person that you're saying that you got connected to was the VP of sales that you have mentioned previously.
Well, actually the person, when I was coming from one of those seminars, self-development seminars, I remember it was a Sunday afternoon, and I asked one of my buddies, hey, you want to come home to my complex to go to the pool? I was living in San Diego. So he came in, and I actually pulled a book from Anthony Robbins Companies, Awaken the Giant Within. It's a great book.
Yes, of course.
And my buddy's from Brazil. He was just in San Diego for a little vacation. And I said, man, one day when I do is speaking like this guy. And he looked at the book. I'm like, Tony, I don't know what it is. Let's go to the pool. So we both go to the pool, speaking Portuguese, on a Sunday afternoon, and there's 2 girls laying down. And we sit in the middle of them just speaking Portuguese. And then the girl to the right said, what kind of language is that? So I flip, well, this is Portuguese, blah, blah, blah. And she asked, what are you doing here? Like, well, I got my MBA in marketing. I'm having a sales job. My goal is to do some type of speaking coach, just like Tony Robbins. Right? The other girl was not paying attention at all. So I jump on the pool. When I come back, the girl who was not paying attention is literally sitting like this, looking in my eyes. And she said, "I'm sorry, I heard your conversation." And I'm like, no big deal. And she said, "I work for Tony. You're going to work for Tony." At that moment, my buddy, that an hour before I showed the book, he goes, "Bro, this is a setup." The other girl, they didn't know each other. "This is a setup." And the girl said, "My name is Lena Powers. I live in this complex and stay here." She goes to her apartment, come back with a business card. And she goes, "Call me on Monday." So I call on Monday, and I set up an interview with a VP of sales. His name was Jim Miller. And I remember going to this interview, literally having, they had one position, they call field sales rep, FSR. Basically, you do talks and you sell tickets. And I had zero, when I say zero speak experience, yeah, maybe I'd done a couple talks to get my MBA, little presentations, but that's it. Never spoke professionally. And Jim Miller, he was using the takeaway clause. Like he said, "Man, I know I like your passion, I like who you are, but I don't think you're gonna do well, especially traveling across the country." And I said, "Jim, I'm not gonna be your best speaker. I will be your number one guy because I want to outwork everybody." And that's what I did for 6 years. So they gave me a chance. And it was kind of hard in the beginning, Nima, because especially you move from a different country here, so you know the feeling. I moved from Brazil and I went to San Diego. And when I went to San Diego became my second home. I had friends there. I established myself. And now the job that I got, Tony Robbins, you literally put everything in storage and you travel just like Jason, our buddy. We traveled the country all the way around. So I was 6 years on the road. So it was very... for me, I had to take a lot of courage to accept the job.
Yeah.
But for me, the job was life-changing for me. Truly life-changing.
That's awesome. Yeah. I could definitely relate to your story. One day I'll share it. But at some point you realize that you're good at speaking. What were your first steps in turning you from a speaker into a coaching business?
Well, I remember specific. I want to pre-frame this correctly. When I start the job with Tony Robbins, we are selling tickets. So imagine you have a company, you go in, you do a 45-minute workshop, and in the end, you sell tickets for his events. As a 4-day event, anywhere from $700 to $2,500, right? One call close. And the beginning I was terrible at it. I'm talking about terrible. So much so that I remember a Saturday evening, 2:00 in the morning, I wake up with this pain in my body. And I literally thought I was gonna die. This crazy pain. So I called my roommate, he called a cab, and I go to the New Jersey hospital ER. I arrived there around 3 in the morning, and I stayed from 3 in the morning until 10 a.m. And then the doctor said, "We couldn't find anything. We believe you're stressed." And they sent me home. That was that diagnosis. I was stressed. And the reason I was so stressed because I couldn't sell tickets. Or the first 6 months, I was every day, Monday to Friday, they send this sales report, and my name, Roberto Monaco, is the last one. Because there is the speaking part and there is the influencing part, which they're two different things. Just like water and tequila, they look the same. You drink, you have a different outcome. And I love speaking, but I wasn't good at influencing. And I remember coming home, I sit down in front of a computer. This is 2002. And I start buying that time was DVD. That was like 21 years ago. DVD, CD, DVD, anything on influence, sales, storytelling, about everything. And then I start my path to improve my skills. So I wasn't naturally gifted. I just learned. I knew that I had to become really good with the technique, the theory, the strategy, the science of communication influence. so that I could improve my results. That's what I did. And eventually I started improving. And then I went from the bottom to number one while I was there. And towards the last year or so, the guys that I was coaching, that I was not only speaking, but I was training and coaching other speakers. They go out and speak. And then a lot of people ask them, hey, I want to do what you do. Who trained you? So I start getting these random messages. Hey, Roberto, I saw so-and-so. Can you help me? I saw so-and-so. Can you help me? And in 2008, end of 2008, 2009, I said, you know what? That's what I want to do. Because I really believe that communication, specifically speaking, is a tool of leadership. And I have worked with almost 50 industries, 50. And if you stop and you analyze the top 3% of any industry, tech, consulting, mortgage, real estate, the leaders, they're doing seminars, they are on radio, they're on podcast, they're on TV, they're advocating. So for me, public speaking presentation is a tool of leadership. And if you want to become a leader, you have to become a great communicator. And that's what I'm super excited about it, because communication is such a simple concept, yet very complex. So I love it. I love the challenge of it.
That's very true. You said public speaking is a tool of leadership. So
Yeah.
one can be trained to be a good speaker, but do you think one can be trained to be a good leader? Or do you think leadership is born? Like you have to be born with it?
No, you can train. You can train. I think you can train.
You think so?
100%.
Dive into it.
Well, I think that if you were to stop and analyze the characteristics of leaders, right? They're passionate, they're visionaries, they're clear about their values, they know how to inspire people, they know how hopefully they have integrity, they have congruent, but they put people first, they have empathy, all these quote unquote great leadership traits, stuff that you can learn. Now, they may have different styles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now that's different. Having a leadership style is different than leadership traits. And I think just like communication, I believe anybody can be an amazing communicator. I really believe that. Introvert, extrovert, people who are more charismatic, less charismatic. Everybody has you just have to find their own style. So I believe that, you can develop leadership skills, the same level that you can develop public speaking, presentation skills. I'll tell you that most people that I encounter, professionals, most people, the vast majority, they don't like to speak to groups. They don't. They shut away. And then I ask the question, how passionate are you about science? How passionate are you about accounting? How passionate are you about whatever you're doing? And they say, well, I'm super passionate about it. I just don't like to speak to groups. I'm like, in my mind, does not make sense. If you're passionate about your subject, does it make sense to be passionate about educating your audience or your marketplace about what you do? So a lot of people, they don't see themselves as a speaker, as a communicator, as a leader. And one of the concepts that I learned is that when you change how you see yourself, your audience changes how they see you. So it's important for any leader, any industry, right? So let's say I'm a software developer. Okay, it's a crazy example here. Let's say I see myself as the best software developer, and then person B here, I'm a great software developer too, and I see myself as a great developer, and also my identity, I see myself as a leader, as an advocate. Right? Career-wise, who's going to do better? Who's going to lead? Who's going to touch more people? Right? So that's the idea. That's what I try to inspire the people, professionals, that everybody can become a great communicator.
Do you think that since everyone has access to have their voice heard, right? Do you think there's a right or wrong way to approach it? Or would you encourage everyone to just, dive in there and start? Is there a wrong way to communicate or build your brand as a speaker or build your brand as a person online? Or do you just encourage someone to just jump in there and learn in the trenches and learn the hard way and see what happens?
What I found, okay, here's what I find, is that in communication, in leadership, you want to make about not about you, about your audience, about the market that you're serving. All right. So if you have the mindset about service, about leadership, and you have a clear avatar or a clear ideal client or someone that you want to help, and you start creating content and having stories and tips and strategies for that avatar or those clients, then I think that's a good way to start. In public speaking and influence and storytelling, you can train all day long, but if you don't put yourself out there, then nothing is worthless, right? So eventually you got to put yourself out there. What we found is that in any professional athlete they train, or a musician they train, the best train, and most people take communication for granted. They don't train. They be like, I'm gonna put. Some people, they are not afraid, and they say because they're not afraid, well, I want to just put myself out there. But there's a lot of technique on storytelling, on communication, on language, on influence that you can use to become even more effective. I think it's a combination of both. One, putting yourself out there, and two, taking the time to learn, to study the craft.
What's the most important storytelling communication skill that you've learned?
Storytelling
and communication skill that you have learned.
Yeah. So the two different things, right?
Yeah.
So as far as communication principle, I would say one of my favorite ones is that congruency is the ultimate tool of influence. By the way, if you're in business, you want to influence. Yeah. If you're in business, you might call persuade, you may call motivate, whatever you want to call, but you want to at some point, you want to create some behavior change. You want people buy from you, refer you, share your interview. You want some influence. And I feel like being congruent with your message is one of the most important facts. So I don't talk about things that I'm not good at or that I don't focus on just to get clicks or to get my brain. I choose not to do. I stay in my lane. I talk about public speaking, presentation, storytelling, mindset, video marketing, content creation. That's it. I don't talk about other things. Why? Because I'm not congruent. I could talk about it, but I'm not congruent. So I choose not to do it. So I think be able to be congruent with your message is key. Second point, that most people, they treat communication as a outside in game, and I treat communication as an inside out game. What I mean by that is that really truly powerful communication comes from your personal experiences, right? And so at some point, I mean, I have like 4 books here. I'm reading 4 books now. So I'm always reading, trying to get that is called outside in. So I get outside content in my head. So I listen, I read, I learn, a process. But then I try to go process the information and go inside out, meaning, do I have any personal experience that illustrates those ideas that I'm learning? Right? So I think that the best communicators that I found is that they use their personal experiences to advance their claims, their points, their messages. Right? So this is another communication principle. Now, as far as storytelling principle, man, there's so many. When I started speaking, 2002, like professionally speaking, and now I had to sell to survive. I got to close the deal. I was really into sales training, like really into sales strategy. And I kept hearing the word storytelling. In the beginning, I thought was fluff. Like, man, that's soft. That's fluff. Cannot be that way. And I remember one time, I got a job at Tony Robbins. I remember one of his first events that I was participating. And then he has the sales, he has his offer. And then he does 1 hour before the offer, he was just telling stories. And I'm like, that's weird. He goes to the storytelling for 1 hour and then sells the whole room extremely well. And then fast forward, one day I was listening to a Zig Ziglar audiobook for 1 hour and 10 minutes. And I was actually counting how many stories he shared in 1 hour and and plus, right? And I'm like 20 plus stories. And I'm like, that moment clicked to me like, man, the best communicators that I admire use storytelling. And then I went to this journey to study storytelling. So the most important thing that I learned, I learned many things on storytelling, but I learned number one, everybody has a story. Number two, every piece of content, presentation, email, post that I do, I try to frame with a story or illustrate. Framing, illustration, meaning framing, I tell the story at a point, illustration, I tell the point, and I tell the story. So every time I'm communicating, when communication matters, I pause and I ask two questions. Number one, what's the point I'm trying to communicate? Number two, what is an example of that? Number two, what's the point I'm trying to communicate? Number two, what is an example of that? And those two questions, number one, give me clarity and inspire me to go in my mind, inside of my body, in my head, and try to find stories, examples from my personal experience. So for the longest time, I was all about storytelling. Then I realized that to become a great storyteller, you have to become a great story finder. So that's not the point too. I'm literally maniac. Let's say you share a story with me and resonates, I'm literally going to write it down. And I have a database actually that the practice of having a storytelling database is one of the critical elements in communication.
Yeah.
Right?
What makes his story or message go from good to great to transformational?
Man, you asked some tough questions today, bud. Okay, so perfect. I have a story for you.
There you go.
Yeah, see, I guess. By the way, that's one of the things too. As for those people who do podcasts, well, if you can answer that question with the story, is always good. I literally post this yesterday on my social media, and I have a bunch of people commenting on it. So a couple months ago, I went to do a presentation for a group of high-level financial planners. There's around 30 people in the room. And then and we're talking about transparency, authenticity, and everybody's like, this is great. And one lady, her name was Mary, it's not her real name. She's like, yeah, it's all about transparency, being authentic. During the afternoon, a couple hours later, I was doing an exercise about, hey, tell why you do what you do in a story format. Right? Not say, hey, I'm an accountant. Hey, I'm a real estate agent. Hey, I'm a CEO. But tell in a story format. And then she told a story about growing up. She was really connected with her grandparents, like they're almost their parents for her. They're like role models, amazing people, and they live in this beautiful house, and they always have holidays and parties. And eventually they got bad financial advice, and they'll end up losing their house and struggling during the golden years. And she saw that, and she saw how much struggle her grandparents had to go through, that she decided to actually become a financial advisor. There is more to the story, but that was the gist. Now, when she told the story from people, everybody's like, the reaction was, that sucks. I'm sorry. But she didn't move anybody. Nobody moved. There's no goosebumps. And then I knew already the problem. The problem was that she was afraid to get into the conflict. You see, Nima, no conflict, no story. If you watch any movie, any great storyteller, or if you have your favorite story, there's always a conflict. And I asked Mary, have you noticed? I gave you, obviously, say, I love your story, I love your theme, but the reason we are not connecting the life we could because you're afraid to get into the story, the emotion. And she said, you're right, because I'm afraid to lose it. What if I lose it? What if I lose it? And then I said, can you actually be an authentic communicator without express your feelings, how you truly feel? She goes, no. So then she tried again, and she didn't cry, but she was really powerful, like very high in an emotional state, and she moved the entire room. I'm talking about goosebumps, people crying, and she was like powerful and poised, speaking with candor. And I'll say, that's it, right? Because she was not afraid to access her emotion. So you asked me how you take one story from average to amazing. One of the elements is to be able to express how you feel. You see, the average presenter describes that feeling. The influencer feels before describing. And she was just kind of like describing that feeling. I was saying, no, we are going to feel before describing. And a lot of people, they think some business people think there's no place in the business world to communicate with emotion. And those people are the ones they're missing out, because we just have to.
I think a lot of times maybe some people would think, it's soft to show your emotions while you're speaking, or like, other people are not going to really care about that. So let me just tell the story. So that might be a way that they be looking at it, which is obviously wrong, as you said, because you make that impact when you have that feeling. So,
for sure.
So you have the Influenceology, and then I actually saw you have the Cairo speaking. So I want to dive into this. This is really interesting since I'm in the healthcare background also. So I know the story of why you picked Cairo speaking, because your daughter was born, and then you called your chiropractor to come in the
wow, and this you're right. You're right.
To come in the hospital and adjust and basically saved your daughter's life.
Yep.
So I want to dive into why Cairo speaking besides that, because there had to once that happened, there has to be a reason why you go to that niche, because you speak with, like you said, real estate agents, Super Bowl champions. Why make a website Cairo speaking and not real estate speaking?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. I love, man. I love how curious you are. You do a good job. Do a great job researching, man. I love it. So I launched Influenceology in 2009. And I have probably, I would say, my portfolio is around 60%, maybe 65 non-chiropractors, 35 maybe chiropractors, or sometimes depends on the year. But I was just working with everybody, all the industries. And then, so the story about my wife, we couldn't get pregnant for 4 years. We went to 4 MDs, couldn't get an answer. Went to chiropractor, we got pregnant, and then they said have a natural birth center. And my daughter had an issue; she wasn't breathing. They want to take her to the hospital. I called my chiropractor. We came adjust her at the birth center. Really, truly miracle. And we ran home. And then there's 2 things that happened. Number one, I felt like chiropractic had such an impact in my life that I feel like I own the industry, because chiropractors are super, for most people, misunderstood. They think chiropractic's only about back pain, neck pain, and it's not. Now, they're very effective back pain, neck pain, but there's way more than that, right? And so the reason I decided to do it was because I also want to help them out, tell their story. And then, and the second reason, I built up a big following in the chiropractic industry, and they start asking me more specific questions. They have different talks they do, and I felt like, you know what, I don't want to. I just want to separate so that I can serve both industries. I can serve, Influenceology clients better, and I can serve them better. That's why I did it. It just was a business move for me, because if I just I have 2 mailing lists, for example. So when I have a Cairo specific content, I don't want to send out someone who has no context. So I like to separate them, keep clean, so I can serve people in different ways. Now, what's fascinating from a communication standpoint, some days I go technology, real estate, chiro, dentist, financial advisor, all right? Coaching, and guess what? 90% is the same. Now, what does change the examples and how they apply, all right? So that's why.
I was going to ask you, because do you think that since you've been in the healthcare world, since, you've built that company, do you think that there's a niche and need for healthcare providers to get guided in speaking? Because I feel like when we go to school, we're just focused on, studying, taking a test, this and that. We're not really focused on entrepreneurship and speaking, putting ourselves out there, building a brand.
Oh, 100%. Crazy. Unbelievable. Yeah, 100% yes. It's a big need. I remember, by the way, this is not only chiropractic too, because I work with other practitioners. But I remember seeing a presentation, and was a doctor speaking not to other doctors, to prospective patients, and was an hour talk. And in an hour talk is one study after one study after one study after one study. I mean, literally killing people, like with a PowerPoint, right? In study, I'm like, man, you're not being, and he wasn't being effective. And I said, then I start coaching him, and we said, we're gonna do a couple things. Number one, you're gonna cut your content by half. And he freaked out, like literally, like, dude, you're crazy. I'm like, no. So what we're gonna do? Well, the rest you're gonna add interactions, you're gonna add stories, you're gonna add analogies. And his conversion went from 40% to over 75%. Right? It was like less is more. So stuff like that. Yeah, there's a whole art to it in communication influence. So I do feel that people need help with the branding, getting themselves out there. And I think most of doctors and healthcare practitioners, they have this belief that if they're really good, they don't have to market themselves. They have like, man, if I'm the best, it's okay. By the way, I tell them, look, referrals are great. Right? I love referrals. You should love referrals. Referrals are amazing. But why Apple put ad on TV? Why Walmart put, why Amazon? Why do they advertise? Why? They're gigantic. Why? Because this is a function. Innovation marketing is a function of great companies. That's something, and that is the muscle, the marketing muscle, the leadership muscle, the sales muscle. For a lot of doctors and healthcare professionals, is challenging for them.
It's funny because I feel like we talked about the impact of storytelling, and I think healthcare professionals have so much story. So if you can just learn how to speak and communicate, you can you become dominant because you have stories of patients, and having stories of people is so connecting, and it's just like learn that aspect, and you could dominate your field.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And I always tell this to my clients, that a story is not a story until it's told.
Yeah. I know that quote that you have. You tell your story, or someone else is going to tell it for you.
Yeah. If you don't share a story, the marketplace should create one about you.
I love that. I've used that at least 4 times since I've heard you say it. So I have the next question I have for you. This one might be a little hard one to get, but if you never worked with Tony, how would you have gone about building your career?
Man, that is a great question. I don't know, because when I came to America and I got my MBA, I was really searching for this path to be able to express my purpose. I really don't know. It's a hard one. I don't want to make up stuff just for answering. I don't know for to be a speaker. I'm assuming I would find a way. There's other speakers out there. But there was such a divine intervention, I guess, or like universe.
Yeah, you were right. Like, you were right place, right time, really, because that story with the girl overheard.
No, the girl. This is crazy. I'm not a big fan of the law of attraction, so I don't share that story. That what I share here today, because I understand the power of visualization, manifestation. I understand. So for those listening, don't be mad with me. But I believe in the law of action too. The action part. I believe in both.
So true.
I believe in both, right? They have a clarity, vision, excitement, and massive action. And I don't want to just, that story, I was taking action. Just to have an idea, when I was taking those seminars at the beginning, I was driving, just for the context, I was driving a 1986 Toyota Tercel, right? That I paid $1,500. And then I eventually saved some money. I paid $3,000 to go to a seminar. So imagine paying a seminar, which was the second seminar I took was a 7-day seminar. Imagine paying a seminar twice as the value of your car. Think about that. If your car is 10 grand, you pay 20. If it's 40, you pay 80. That's what I did. Why? Because I was searching for like, man, I have this energy. What is it? I want to be able to manage. I wasn't clear. So I think that's a great question. I don't know. I think eventually I'll be mature enough and realize, hey, man, that's what I want to do. Start from zero or work from someone else like I did for Tony. But that was definitely a godsend universe calling me, hey, man, to be in that place. I'm friends with that lady, Lena Power, and I'm super grateful. It was like crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy, the power of networking and just the right place, right time.
Yep.
It's crazy. And I always say there's something that recently happened to me where something happened and then it backed out. But that thing that happened caused me to do something else that might lead to something else. That's how I'm thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, that my first go-to didn't go through, but that caused me to do something else that might create something. So
100%.
You have to, I wrote something on LinkedIn the other day. I said, you need to learn how to fail better. Like everyone's going to fail, but you need to learn how to fail better because every failure is teaching you something.
Amen.
So
share something on this topic. A quick story.
Yeah.
We just caused. So in 2000, when I was leaving Tony Robbins to open up my company, 2008, 2009, those 2 years. 2009, I was invited to do I was living in San Diego, and there was like the mortgage meltdown was happening. I was invited to do. Someone called me and said, "Hey, Roberto, do you want to come and speak in Atlanta?" And I was living in San Diego. We're doing an event called Mortgage Revolution. So okay, to bring back, I think it was 2010, to bring back the loan officers and help them out. So okay. So I said, what is your speaker fee? Well, it's a nonprofit event. You cannot pay you to come speak. So I'm thinking, okay, San Diego, Atlanta, what day, speak, come back. That's 3 days minimum. So no problem. You guys cover my hotel? No, it's a nonprofit event. Don't have the money. So okay. And I said, well, can I at least talk about what I do? I have a speaking class and all that jazz. He goes, no, we don't want nobody to pitch from the stage. And I'm like, so you asking me from San Diego to go to Atlanta, pay my fare, pay a hotel, do a 90-minute talk, and I cannot promote my services. Yeah. And then I said, well, thanks so much. I can do it. So I hang up. But I had this really crazy belief, Nima, that I say yes to presentation opportunities. So I call my business partner and say, hey, man, I know it makes no sense. It's actually a bad business decision, but I feel called to go. He goes, go. So I went. I did the talk. And right after the talk, this gentleman come to me and said this, my name is Carl White. I have a company called the Mortgage Marketing Animals. We have over 100,000 loan officers on my list. I would love to promote you to my list and you can sell anything. And I did one webinar next week. And I have everything that I'm telling you, I have it documented. From that speaking gig, I done over 30 paid speaking gigs, dozens of coaching clients, even today, right? And this happened 2009. Even today, 2023, I coach one of the top loan officers in the country. He's the number one in New York, number one in Long Island, right? A loan officer, because of my connection of a talk that I did in 2009. Think about that for a second, right? So for me, it's all about showing up and giving your best every single, just say, no, I used to be attached to results. Now I'm not attached to results. Obviously I want to perform, but I'm not attached to it because I know when you put your heart out there, when you want to serve and you give ideas, then amazing things happen.
So true. And so I remember myself giving a talk to some pharmacy leaders. I aspire to be able to speak like you one day. You know, so I'm on the bottom also, but
no, you're not. No, you're not.
So I was speaking to pharmacy leaders, and I ended the presentation with, you need to learn how to have a bias for yes. Like, no matter what come across your desk, whatever, you're going to come across, oh, I can't do it. I don't know if I'm capable of doing it. I don't know if I can handle it. Have a bias for yes. Go to YouTube University, figure it out, and go to the presentation. Whether you fail, whether you do good, whether or not, something is going to come out of that thing that you don't want to do. So
I love it.
Have a
I
bias.
love it.
Have a bias for yes.
Yes. I love that basically you're saying the same thing in different wording. I love it.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe in shortcut success.
That's so true. I talked about this with Jason.
I don't believe it. But if there's one thing, right? I don't believe it. I want to be clear. But if there's one thing that can help you speed up the process, is say yes to presentation opportunities. Why?
Yeah.
Right? Number one, most people don't want to do it. Number two, the ones who want to do it, they don't train. Right? And then, so now, then you go like, if you want to do it and you train, you put some energy, and then you're going to be, you really can speed up your process of leadership in any field.
You know what's crazy? A lot of people are scared to get up and speak, especially I know in my field, like a presentation or whatever. But you don't understand, when you get up and speak, even if you do bad, none of these people in the crowd are going to know you did bad because they don't have the courage to get up there and do it. So no matter what, no matter how bad you do, you did good in their eyes. Because they can't compare it to anything right then and there. So get up there, give the presentation, and learn something from it.
Yeah, so, I love it.
In 2008, you left Tony Robbins, opened Influenceology.
Yeah.
And I'm going to summarize this story because I have a question for it. So a person by the name of Gene called you to translate for a gentleman named Chad.
Oh, where did you hear this story, man? You have all my dirt. You have all my dirt. Oh, man.
I got to do my research.
That's a dirt. You have a dirt on me, buddy.
So we're not going to go through the whole story, but long story short, you went to go translate for someone that and let's just say you called it Portuguese Spanish.
Yeah, so that's a good story. That's a really good story.
Yes. So you had a little setback failure in that situation.
Yes, I do. Yeah, big time.
My question is, how important is it for you as a coach to let your clients know that they will fail at some point, and how do you coach them to deal with that failure? Because no matter what we start, we're going to fail a little bit at it at the beginning.
Yeah. Yes. So I want to create context.
No problem.
So that story. What happened was when I left Tony Robbins, Gene called me to do to translate a 2-day event, 16 hours. And Chet Holmes wrote an amazing book called The Ultimate Sales Machine. He passed away, but he was a New York Times bestselling author. And I said yes. So they paid me to go to Mexico City, and I want to make this super short. After going and rehearsing and training, I hired someone, a Spanish teacher full-time. I went there and I was really doing a presentation, and they literally stopped the event and kicked me out of the stage. I mean, and this is like after 6 years of speaking. This was day one. They kicked me out because people couldn't understand my Spanish accent. And then that was a Friday. And then there's 600 people there. And I remember going to my room Friday night. It was like, man, I feel so bad because I left Gene down, Chat down, the company down. I was lucky, Nima. I was lucky because they had a professional translator on staff. And this lady was amazing. So Friday evening, Gene called me and said, hey, man, how are you feeling? I said, Gene, bro, I'm so sorry. I messed up. I thought I could do it, but obviously I couldn't. He goes, man, I know you, because we worked for many years together. He said, that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because tomorrow on day 2, Saturday, I have a meeting when I go. And I wonder if you can do a 2-hour talk in English. I'll have someone translate you in Spanish. By the way, you don't have to do it. It's not part of your contract. I'm not paying you. I'll pay you. It was a brand new talk. And it was 9 o'clock. It was 9 o'clock in the evening when he called me. And I said, of course. Because in life, either you own your results or your results own you. I was like, man, I'm not going to go back home from Mexico City to San Diego like that. So I prepared this brand new talk. Then Saturday, I wish you were there to see their faces. The audience, they're thinking, this guy again? Right? But they didn't know I was going to do my talk in English and have a translator. And Nima, one of the most happiest moments of my career, 21 years doing this. The same 600 people, they saw me being kicked out from stage on Friday, stood up on Saturday, gave me a standing ovation. The same people. In life, you are going to fail. I'm going to fail again. My clients will fail. But if we have the mindset that you want to serve and you learn from it, and you're resilient to bounce back, it's just part. I mean, literally, it's part of it. It's just part of it. Nobody likes to go through. It is part of it. All right? With the reps, with the training, with the skills, you have, especially in the context of speaking, you're going to have less failure, but you will. It's just part of it. It's really hard to become a great communicator. You're going to have those bad, challenging moments. You will. And I tell my clients, you will, man. It's like, I don't care how much training you do, you will. Well, you have to learn from it, be resilient, and then keep going.
So true. I have 2 more questions left. I know we're running out of time. For someone who doesn't have a big name, how would you go about scaling both their, guiding them to scale their speaking business and speaking coach business?
For the speaking business, what I found that if you have a niche, so I have 2 experiences of going broad with Influenceology and going niche down. With the niche, you're going to grow way faster. I mean, like way fast, and it's easy to market. I learned. Now, if your niche is too tiny, then you may be like, man, there's no, Roberto, my niche is too tiny, there's no money, right? Or there's no enough audience. Might be one that is a consideration. But I'll pick up one niche and master the niche. Let me give you an exercise for the audience here. It was the exercise that really helped me a lot. When I was leaving Tony Robbins, 2008, opened up my company 2009, that transition, I remember got a piece of paper and I wrote down this. I said, Roberto Monaco, but if you're thinking about developing a speaking career, this is a good exercise for you. Roberto Monaco is an expert in blank. All right? So you write your name, is an expert in blank, and you just write, go crazy. So I wrote leadership, influence, sales, speaking, storytelling, mindset. I wrote all these things. And I let it go. Next day, I come back, I pull my paper, and I ask these questions. From all these answers here, what is one thing that I'm passionate about? Why passion? Because I want to keep developing, studying. There's a need, like people need in the marketplace, that they're willing to pay for, gonna make money. And then I have credibility. So for me, it was speaking. I've done thousands of talks. People need help. They can pay. And I love it because I struggle. And I focus on that. I still focus on that. Now, throughout the years, I went, deep than wide. I do other things too, but my main thing is this: is presentations, communication, storytelling, is finding the message, and has been a really good journey. So I think that's a good exercise to get super clarity. And you have to get tired of saying the same thing a different way, right? It's like when you get tired, like, man, I'm saying the same thing over and over and over again. That means like your message is coming through because there's so much noise. And the other advice I'll give you is this: in the past, when I started, there was a lot of people usually you made money with the keynote. That was a big, and then you have seminars, right? Nowadays, of course, technology, membership sites, group coaching, products. I don't want you to see yourself, quote unquote, as a speaker. It's more like an expert, and the speaker becomes one of the vehicles, right? So it's kind of like Or I do keynotes, yes. I do my own training, which I do. So the way I make money, I do keynotes, I do training, just finish up a 2-day training for this company. I do my own events 3 times a year, influencing from the front in Atlanta. I have online courses. I have coaching that I do, consulting. So see yourself as an expert, and speaking becomes one of the things that you're gonna do. And that way you're gonna have a bigger impact. My goal was never to be every weekend away from my family traveling, has never been my goal. I usually travel twice a month, but I do a lot of stuff online as well.
Awesome. And I'll leave it on this question right here. If I were to go back to high school and speak to your best buddy and your favorite teacher, and I was to ask them, hey, who was Roberto? What would they say?
Oh man. I would say was a guy who was determined and very loyal, and a good friend, very loyal and determined.
Awesome, Roberto. I'm gonna leave the last words for you. If there's anything you want to let the audience know, any messages, anything you have coming up, anything.
But my message is this: that my suggestion for you is that you go inside your heart and ask, what I'm passionate about. Right? What's something that lights me up? Maybe you have a job now, that's not what it is. Maybe you have a passion. What I found, everybody has a passion. And if you have a passion for something, you can create a business around it. Let me tell a quick story. When I was working for Tony Robbins, this is one of the biggest lessons I learned working for Tony. I met this lady, her name was Melissa, and she was one of the Tony Robbins attendees of the seminar. And then when I was having a conversation with her, and I asked her, so what do you do for a living? She goes, I do eyebrows. And then I said, oh, you're a makeup artist. She goes, no. I only do eyebrows. And I'm like, really? And people pay for it? Well, fast forward, now she has a business, over 20 locations, only doing eyebrow, right? I mean, make all kinds of money, celebrities. And I'm like, and that was the biggest lesson, because we never think you can make a living doing eyebrows. Man, she has a kick-ass business, employees, right? And so there's always a way for you to find the passion. And once you find the passion, go tell the story, go serve people at the highest level possible. Because if you don't share your story, the marketplace will create one about you. So
no better quote that end the podcast than on that. Roberto, thank you so much. Everyone that tuned in, thank you so much. Make sure you go follow Roberto, Influenceology, Cairo Speaking, LinkedIn, Twitter. All the links will be in the description below on all the streaming platforms. Roberto, thank you again. And thank you for everyone that tuned in.
Thanks so much, buddy.